but Accardi the leader with 100 metres left to go. Avoid Lightning's trying to get to Accardi, but it's Accardi in front. She's the queen of the coast.
Pohu Takawa, Invincibella the inside, Pohu Takawa, Sabatiano trying to come back, Invincibella, Pohu Takawa, Invincibella's in front, Invincibella defeated.
Sit around and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Maybe a diamond ring.
Tycoon Tara still in front. In her time tries on the outside. Latest prompt response. Tycoon Tara's in front. Prompt response on the outside. Tycoon Tara, prompt response. Tycoon Tara. Palacepan coming through. Late the inside is Foxy Frida. Palacepan taking over near the line though. And Palacepan from the Tatts Tiara.
Maybe somewhere down the road away. You'll think of me and wonder where I am these days.
Snap Dancer in the centre of the track, the leader from Palayapan. Here's Star Tolles. I notice her running on strongly. Palayapan the inside, Snap Dancer, and Star Tolles driving through the centre. Is it hers? Yes, it is!
Here comes Ballinipatina looming up over on the outside of the inside bubble. Rock Samana runs home, but Ballinipatina's in front by a length and a half. What a wonder there she is, Ballinipatina. And Ballinipatina's won the Tatts Tiara.
Don't have to be ashamed of the car I drive. I'm just glad to be here, happy to feel that.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
It is indeed the end of the line for the Group 1s of the Australian racing season 2024-2025. And you just heard some of the great winners of the Tatts Tiara. Audio courtesy of Sky Racing. Vince Accardi, good morning to you, my friend.
Top of the morning to you, Ralphy. Another great day in paradise.
Absolutely, and a great day in Queensland too. This is fantastic. Good way to end the Queensland Carnival with really good weather. The rail are going out 6 metres. What type of track do we expect tomorrow?
6 metres, Ralphy. You don't really need to get too far off the fence to be in a really good positive scenario. 2-3 off the fence sort of gets you in the right sort of zone, particularly if you're a forward runner like lead pack runners. They don't need to venture too far off the fence. It doesn't mean that the midfielders and the back markers aren't going to get some assistance getting out a bit wider, but like all things, big fields, you lose a lot of ground getting out wide, Ralph. It's hard, so it's all going to be pace related. But I'm taking a view on pace up to midfield, probably advantaged.
I do like this card. I'm going to say, let's hope we're high-fiving by the end of it. We'll start with the Tatts Tiara Race 8, the Group 1 event here. And gee, there's a standout figure here on your early edition race speed profiles. IVR forecasted just 0.4 lengths above benchmark. This is not a strong Group 1.
Well, it's not a strong Group 1 if we're looking at just current profile. If you look at it from an historical point of view, you know there are horses in this race that have got the capacity to run anywhere between sort of 2 and 4 lengths above benchmark if they turn up and bring their A game. So I do have a high expectation that that's the bare minimum requirement. So how many horses in this race are ready to run to that level or high is what I'm looking at.
Grinzinger Bell is the no-brainer to go forward and take it up. What type of pace do you think they'll be going?
I was having a good look at Grinzinger Bell yesterday, Ralphie. From all the different variables that I was looking at, everything sort of pointed that Grinzinger, depending on what a couple of horses do out wide, like how do you pronounce it? The one that Jordan Chai? Yeah,
Covalent. Yeah, Covalent.
Let's take an assumption that they may come from the wide barrier and come across. If they do that, and being one of a couple of key runners that are pushed out a little bit wider to a lesser extent Bubba's Bay, then I feel we're going to be edging at least somewhere around the +3 or 4 zone. If they don't, like particularly Covalent, if it chooses to sit a little bit further back because of, they take a position to go back instead of forward from the wide gate, then we might be 2.5 lengths above the standard.
All right, the obvious starting points with your most advantage here, Floozy and Tashi. They've been racing against each other a bit. What they've both got in common, they're both racing really well, both rock hard fit, but one's winning and one isn't winning, Vince. Floozy's 4 in a row since joining the Golden Stable, ex-Price Kent, and Tashi, like I said, racing well without winning.
Yeah, well, hasn't it really hit a pretty sharp level of form, this Floozy? And that last start was probably just a testament about like where this horse is still heading. 0.7 above Ralphy overall, a little bit of a slowdown in the mid-race of around 2.3 lengths, indicating that Race Matrix has got it pinned up as high as plus 1.4. It looks like, gauging from the intel, the peaking run's coming tomorrow. And that does put this horse in a pretty strong position of being able to run genuinely in that, I would say, the plus 1 to 1.5 range. And didn't matter how I looked at it, because there's a bunch of horses here, Ralphie, that are huge odds that could turn up and run big, but this was one of the horses that were hard in the market and deserves to be there, because I don't see this horse running anything less than about a plus 1, and that puts you in the mix.
So last start, Tashi ran second to Floozy on that quick backup. It was beaten half length on a matchup basis. How does it profile today, going from 1300 to 1400 on those two?
Well, I'd say on the 14's not a negative for the horse. It's probably not going to get its golden race shape. It's probably like softer tempo, so it might not be ideal for the horse. And the other factor is, whilst I have huge respect for Peter Snowden, from a training perspective, all the signs are this horse actually did peak last start. Now it's a question of, is it going to hold its form and a group of other horses don't turn up because they aren't quite where this horse is running at the moment? So I'm sitting here saying 0.4 is about as far as I want to push the lever on this horse. And there's a possibility this horse is going to hold that or regress backwards. So I didn't want to leave it out of the top 4 purely out of the horses in the right form. But it's not one that I can see a lot of upside on. And I feel the pace is going to be against the horse.
The screaming grand final day runner is Firestorm. I dare say there'll be big money coming for it for the robots. Waller, J-Mac. The peak, this preparation was a serious peak, which I'll get you to explain. And that was also, was it? It was second up. And tomorrow, second up, albeit off a 70-day freshen rather than a full spell. And last up was a beauty, this course over 1,300 metres.
Yeah, very interesting sort of set up preparation wise, and this is one of these horses, Ralphie, that if we really makes a mockery of the 0.4, if it could turn up and run, let's say, to its Rose Hill run in March, where around plus 4.1, even with the race matrix is indicating it's not anything less than a 2.5 based on what that field's done leading into that race. You also have a look at the way the horse has closed out over the last 400 metres. This is a horse that loves pace and pressure. The challenge for J-Mac's going to be, all right, where are you drawn? You're going to need a little bit of luck. But when I looked at the whole mapping scenario, Ralphie, and I just took a position about where you're likely to sit, it was somewhere around that maybe 5.5 to 6.5 lengths off that lead speed. There is a bit of congestion around there, but there's a high probability of cover. Even though you might be wider than ideal, you will have cover, and that's going to give you the chance to probably get into lanes 12 to 15 without having to do too much work. And more importantly, it is one of the biggest closers in the field, Ralphie, off a solid, run race. So hence the reason why I wanted to push it up and really put a big signal that this horse looks ready to, obliterate what it's done last start. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to run to plus 4, but plus 2, 2.5 looks very real, Ralphie.
Well, I mean, that +4 was beaten the nose by Lady Shenandoah with
Yep,
Lady of Camelot third. It's in very, very real form, that performance. But
absolutely.
profiling its whole career, Vince, at the moment, it is a real outlier run. So how do you take that point of view?
It is, but what I look at is if I look at last campaigns, so one of the beauties of when we put the lens of the race matrix on, we sort of get to stress test the variables. That first up run, Rose Hill, 0.3. So let's say we took that as the low point and the horse isn't going to run any worse than that. Remember, the hurdle rate's 0.4. That automatically puts you there. Now, the race matrix has come out and given indication that that particular race is as strong as plus 1.5. And then we had that run at Rose Hill where the horse ran the 4.1 and the race matrix indicating about 2.5. And then that subsequent run on the 5th of the 4th, we were back to 0.3 and the race matrix also indicating 0.2. But then let's look at these two runs. The 1600 metre run at Randwick on the 5th
That's the
of April.
Doncaster.
Yeah. I mean, this horse is travelling 10.3 lengths below benchmark. How are you going to run some monster time? Very difficult. The first up run of Rose Hill was 9.3 lengths below benchmark, where this horse was travelling, and the leader was going 6.1 below. They aren't the right race shapes for this horse. This horse loves speed. It's going to get that. There's always crazy things can happen, Ralph. I shouldn't say there's no possibility that they're going to run -5 or 6, but that's the sort of scenario you would need for this horse to probably only deliver a benchmark half above type performance. So I have a high expectation this horse is going to run a lot better than that because it gets a suitable race shape. Now, if it was drawn another 8 or 9 barriers further in, it'd be a standout.
Yeah, that seems the either-or scenario. I want to ask you about, before we get to a couple others on your most advantage, because you've mentioned the pace a couple of times. Grinzinger Bell. Gee, I like this horse at the price. And I just want to put this lens on it. When Damien Lane got beaten on it September last year at Moonee Valley, Danny O'Brien gave him a cook. I mean, this is public, right? Because next start, he said, you went too slow. So next start at Caulfield, leads all the way at Caulfield Guineas Day it was. It's got a couple of spiked performances. One was at Flemington, and it's a proven first up horse. And the reason I want to put that in the equation now is because Danny's already stated he wants the horse to go fast. Well, that'll be the clear instructions for Tim Clark, who is a very good front-running jockey.
He is. Now, let's say for some unknown reason they might run as fast as what they did at Flemington back in February last year, where the horse went +8.
Yeah.
And it did lead all the way to win, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's say that's the scenario that happens. If you knew that for sure that was going to happen, I would say get more money on Firestorm.
Yes.
If that was going to happen. But you look at all the other runs at this distance. Now, it hasn't had many. They're all between 0.2 and 1.5 above. 0.2 below to 1.5 above. That's roughly the range of this horse, with the exception of that one run. Then the other little factor that I looked at, Ralphie, because this is like a critical horse for this race, because if you can really nail the tempo of what this horse is going to travel at, it just makes your job really easy. Now, I looked at this horse's its historical top 3 performances through the history. Again, if we take away that one run from Flemington, the horse sits rock solid somewhere between 1.5 below and 1.5 above. So I sat back here and said, the 2.5 looks very real, but if those couple of wide runners really put high octane in, then we could see the forcing of the arm. Because, see, Tim Clark goes quick, but Tim Clark's not going to go any quicker than he needs to go. That's when you look at the way he rides up front, he can go forward aggressively, but if no one else is making any running, he's unlikely to try and space them. He's going to be more keener to try and control, so he's got something left at the end, which, of course, that's going to work against the horse, Ralphie. So the history sort of says that the +8 looks very low, and we still are with this situation where 1.5, 2.5 looks very real about what's going to happen pace-wise, and that doesn't totally work against the horse. The problem the horse is going to have is there are 4 or 5 runners that have got giant sprints and are going to be like in that strike zone, and this is taking the assumption they're going to bring their A game as well. Grinsinger Bell looks set to run to the top of its form.
Yeah, and what I like doing, we spoke about this with War Machine, and we spoke about it so often with these Group 1s. What's the real trainer's intent when it comes to, is this grand final day for you? And my query, and it's only slight, but with horses like Floozy and Tashi, they've been racing for a while, and Tony Gollan wanted to see what he had under the bonnet with Floozy. Maybe they've shown their best, whereas we know with Firestorm it's set for this race. We know with Grinzinger Bell it's set for this race. And here's one that you've already mentioned, but it smashed Grinzinger Bell at Caulfield in February. Coeur-Volant. Wonder what it can do at huge price, because one thing with this horse, it is definitely set for this race grand final day, and it's a ex-Mike Moroney horse that the Hayes boys now have, and the Hayes boys have got these horses flying, stylish in Melbourne, but also, of course, War Machine that I just mentioned.
Yeah, well, Grinzinger Bell, firstly, just with the 77 days off, it's going to be fresh.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no question, unless it fumbles the start for some unknown reason, it's going to take up the running. But this one here with Jordan Charles, I'm of the view that they are going to press forward. I'm of that view.
Well, that's what I did at Caulfield.
Yeah, I am of that view, because I'm thinking, what on earth is Jordan Childs going to do from out there? Is he really? See, there is this scenario. A couple of ways to look at the tactics, right? Because I am thinking about the tactics. Could it be possible that the Hayes camp say, follow J-Mac?
Yep.
It's possible. Now, if it's going to be follow J-Mac, then that sits perfectly with its typical profile of being in the mid-pack and running at a more orderly speed, and then it diffuses the high pressure up front. On the flip side, if you were not going to be taking those thoughts into consideration and you're going to just run your own race, then if it was your horse and you're drawn wide and you're oblivious to say, I'm going to follow this jockey or follow that jockey, I'm just going to pull the ripcord and come across and get out of the possibility of needing luck very early, because I know that I'm good enough to come across and make the running. Even if I have to force the lead speed up by 1 or 2 lengths, that horse can still cope. So that's the big question. And it really is that, Ralphy. The other factor is, form-wise, probably not going as good as some of the other horses. Only got a sort of one highlight run, and that was the one at Caulfield back in February. Other than that, it hasn't really been able to get there. So there's also that little challenge. Are we dealing with the same horse? That is that possibility. And the market sort of got that sort of locked in as well, Ralphie. But I personally, when I was just going through the chessboard, it was one of very few runners that had a positive overall energy distribution early and late, which I respect a lot, because I know when these horses have this sort of setup, it's very, very vital. Now, if the horse goes all the way forward, it loses that advantage. But if they, because they're drawn next door to J-Mac, right?
Yeah.
If they come across with him, they might end up being very, very lucky, right? And get a blended run and have a crack. Maybe he might take the running before Firestorm does, and take off somewhere inside that 900 metre mark, 800 metre mark, and go for it. This is all part of the game, Ralphie. It's exciting, but unfortunately, they hasn't drawn the best gate to have all possibilities in its favour.
Well, it isn't, but at $26,
Yep.
if you look at that end of the market, or if you're looking at multis, we know what its ability. And the one other thing from that, just to round off, that 7th of June meeting 3 weeks back, that Eagle Farm track played dodgy. So there might be some big form turnarounds from that meeting. Of course, last meeting it played terrific, and one of those was Alentia there. Now, on the day, 7s out to 10s. what worries me is maybe it's a sign that Aledia is no longer Aledia, but at her best, she's a very, very good mare.
Yeah, isn't this? Well, maybe it's come to its top, but then again, it could be the Ralphie scenario that you mentioned a couple of weeks back. That is this the grand final for the horse? Because if you look at what this horse does have in its favour this campaign, it's got a +1 to its board name first up at Randwick, 15th to the second. Race Matrix franks it with a +1.3. You've got the 15th to the third, Rosehill, 1500 +1.7 when running fourth. And again, you look at that. See, this is the thing, Ralphie. If Firestorm's there, so's Alentia.
On talent, absolutely.
So I just sort of sit there and look at things very realistically and say, okay, 1400's ideal. It's not the perfect pattern that I would say, oh, I love this particular pattern. But that's the old adage when I've looked at simulation work. When you have a 63-day break and you're off a preparation that sort of started in February, if you have a negative run, which this horse had its worst run for the campaign, right? There's a high probability, it's better than 70% that you rebound at your subsequent run and then you're done. So now, could Waller be the genius and the rebound's coming? And if the rebound comes, you know the range is going to be somewhere between +1 and +1.7. How can you deny the horse from being there? This is how I looked at it. So I just sat back here and said, okay, you're drawn perfect. Where else do you want to be? Right in the middle, 8. It could have been drawn 19 and it probably wouldn't have been a disadvantage for the style of this horse. But 8 is golden. You're going to be able to hold your line. Like everything else, you need a little bit of a split in the home straight to have, your chance of getting victory. And then when do you take off? The horse has demonstrated that off fast pace, Ralphie, and this is what I'm looking at, right? Good solid speed, not necessarily fast pace. The horse has still got the capability of putting down a +5, +6 last 400. And these are the sort of ingredients that I'm looking at. And can you be in the right position to strike that? So for that reason, I said, Alentia, I could push you out and say, no, you're done. But I wanted to push it up there and ignore the market price because just from my own simulation work, I know there's a big chance of a rebound. And then just sitting back and just listening to what we discussed a couple of weeks ago into today, that there is a lot of merit in what was communicated, and particularly when you articulate, hey, that's not its grand final. We know when it is 2 weeks from now.
Yes, and for those for our customers there, look at that early edition of Race Speed Profiles IVR profile. There's only one horse who had a better best last prep, and that was Firestorm. 1.7 is the second best in the field of the last prep there. And to wind off with, you got Zazoo in your top 6 that you'll pair back tomorrow morning for your final edition Race Speed Profiles. And Zazoo was sound last start.
He was sound last start, Ralphie. And one of the reasons why I wanted to just mark him initially and not blend him out at the moment is the horse also has a positive setup in terms of energy distribution, even though all things aren't right, but just on balanced on where it's likely to be from that position. Again, it's drawn on the wider side. There's a big chance this horse is going to get a blended run as well and has the capability of being reasonably competitive. It doesn't possess the sprint of a couple of others. So he just sits on the fringe, and he's more a multiplayer than one that I'm striking as, he could beat them all.
And just so that I've said it, why is the McAvoy team running Coco Sun first up after 231 days away? And this is a stable, and I've seen it repeatedly. You heard of the two Vince in Victoria. They win first up with horses off more than 200 days, and they haven't barrier trialled it publicly.
Yeah.
It's just a head scratcher.
Well, one thing with the McAvoy team, he, as a trainer, sometimes for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, and that's not through like deliberate, it's just how it plays out. He has a tendency to really screw his horses right down first up.
Yes.
So obviously the 231 days isn't going to be scaring off someone that likes this stable and what they like to do first up. The challenge that I had, like, he's gone for a giant ask to do this here first up. Like, he must believe the horse has improved several lengths, because his history sort of, that doesn't completely rule him out, but he would need at least half a dozen horses to run poorly.
Well, he's 50, so I just
Yeah.
thought I'll put that on the
Yeah.
table. And it looks like it's a yearling horse now too, so maybe they just want to run it in the Group 1 there. So anyway, we'll talk business and finalise everything tomorrow. But the clear point being, Vince, is you're saying that if Firestorm was drawn in a little bit more, it'd be a standout, but
Yep.
you want to be very careful taking it on with J-Mac.
Exactly.
Okay. We'll go in race order from here, and then we'll work our way backwards. The Healy, the sprint race and last. The market's got it pretty open, but there's I thought you'd be keen on this one. General Salute, you've got most of edge. What type of pace are you expecting in this last race?
Yeah, well, first of all, General Sled, hasn't he come back in fantastic fashion? Both those two runs, I mean, they're awesome. This is a good race, Ralphie, in terms of pressure and pace. Like, when I was just going through the mapping, very, very clear indicators that this is some a sprint race is going to be probably on the low 1.5, 2, and we could be going +4 or 5. So there is definitely going to be solid speed here. So I am scoring the race above average in terms of the early speed. We're going to go better, faster than +4. Not sure, but I'm pinning somewhere between +3 and 4 to be the range.
Well, in that case, you would think it's going to suit some a horse like General Salute. Just talk us through that Kembla win, because you could look at it and say, well, it was a Wednesday. It was pretty real.
It was very real, Ralphie. First of all, best of the day, overall score +1.2. Race Matrix, ended up scoring at about a half above, so slightly down, and that's that. All the runs of the previous 6 starts for all the horses in that race, the blended view, scored it slightly down. But then we look at the structure and the makeup. 0.6 below benchmark is what the horse travelled at through the first section, off a very solid pace, a 4.3. Again, giving us a little signal that if they go that fast, not going to be a negative for the horse. And this was off 300 odd days off. 0.7 above between the 8 and the 4, plus 5.8 last 400. So you know what that means, Ralphie? That means high probability of being flat in your subsequent start. The horses turned up and run 0.7 above flat. Lead speed was 11.3 lengths below benchmark through the first section. That was a big enabler from the horse. But then you look at where the horse was positioned. Off such a slow speed, the horse was virtually 6.5 lengths off him. A lot, even further back than what it was off a faster pace first up. Didn't show anywhere near the same tenacity in the mid. And even the last 400 was another sign and signal that the horse had felt the effects of the first up run and still managed to put in a 2.6. The other key factor is I feel this horse, nice firm ground, is going to be a big, big plus for this horse as well. And when I mean firm, we're not going to be on fast track, but I'm talking about not on a slow, 5 or 6.
Yeah. And in both those wins, I call it the picket fence. Best last 800, 600, 400 and 200 a day. That's always a good sign of pure sustained closing speed.
How can you knock that? And the other thing is, now looking at this stable, maybe not like the Ryan of the old days. If you remember Ralphie in the early days, Ryan was like just a fanatic of having a just perfect first up, right? And you get 1 or 2 runs. But I love the fact they know they got this horse going superb, and they're giving it the 88 days, Ralph. It's just like a proper, break to be ready for this first up without losing that conditioning and the fitness levels that you get from racing. This plays into the golden G Ryan type style of having a horse ready.
No doubt. I'll skip to the favourite. So you need some luck at the moment on the early edition 4th, and there's 2 ways of looking at it. Now, he's obviously in terrific form. I thought he was a bit disappointing last start, had his chance, but then I looked at the micro splits and he hit a genuine flat spot between the 400 and 200. So you wouldn't want him to do that again tomorrow, but maybe the speed will enable him not to.
Well, yeah, Ralph, you're right about that. I mean, the horse did lose 2.6 lengths. he still broke benchmark, which is a plus, right? When you look at it from that point of view, you look at his last 2 sectionals; they were super strong overall. So with that little bit of interruption, we could have probably added a half to a length to the overall performance, and we would be sitting here saying, well, the horse is pretty much gone to his Warwick Farm levels when he was a maiden. Like that's his best record performance to date of plus 1.7. And he's actually trending to that, Ralphie. He hasn't had a lot of runs. This is a Snowden horse who's also another trainer that's very, very capable. So he's a little bit different, Peter Snowden, when you look at his profile and the way he preps up horses. He can have them ready early, but most of his horses will give you 3-4 solid runs. So he's just sits really nicely, 35 days, good solid performance at his top. It's just, can he bring a bit more? That's all he's got to do. Can I just bring a bit more than what I did? And that little bit of blemish in the fractional splits is a big indicator that we probably didn't get the very best out of him last start.
All right, well, 3 weeks back here, the 1,200-metre race was won by Front Page. Hidden Wealth ran second to $4.20. The disappointing on the day favourite was A Little Deep, and so you've got them both at the moment on your in your most advantage. I can't help thinking, Vince, what you just said a race earlier. Was this the little dip run for A Little Deep to then spike again? Now, if it is, her best is pretty good, but they're all going to be having to catch Hidden Wealth, and he's got a lot of tenacity up front, this horse, when he's right, and he got back on the clean ground last start.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, have they put a rider on for Little Deep yet?
No.
Okay,
That's still unknown.
Yeah, just a little bit of a concern why they haven't got a rider engagement yet. So does that mean something? This is how I'm looking at it. But in terms of respect about the horse, first and foremost, how can we look at that Morphettville run, Ralphy, where he ran 4th on the 26th of the 4th. I looked at the competition round. I mean, Charmstone, really, when you think about it, just golden performance, and franked it in terms of its capability when it ran 2.4 that day above. Amina, another high, quality horse, not like a star, but very capable of being competitive in a race like this, just like Charmstorm is. And then there's Little Deep. So I feel that the +1 that the horse produced that day is like right on its wheelhouse, and then you have so many runs that frank it as well behind it from the previous preparation. I mean, there was 3 runs there, Ralphie, where the horse ran between 0.5 and 0.8 above, and 2 of them were victories, and a couple of them were placings. This is a very consistent horse. So depending on who they got on board and everything being okay, I love the fact that we had a slightly negative run on the 42-day break. Hopefully that's all I'm seeing it as, and we're going to get the rebound and a big run to happen on tomorrow. And a big run for me is like around that +1 range. So he's there, subject to the rider. Hidden Wealth, on the other hand, Ralphie, he's trending. He's trending in absolutely the right profile. Last start, 0.4 above. This is a trend runner for me that's absolutely ready to test its 0.9 above. And again, when we look at this race here, Ralphie, this is roughly what you need to be able to run. You have to be able to run somewhere near +1 to be competitive, and this horse is ready for that. I felt that the amount of energy the horse used last start will bring this horse to its top. It went 4 lengths above first section and pretty much sort of held its line right up until it got to its last 200 metres, and then the horse was done. Had a bit of a fartlek setup, like in other words, speed, a little bit of softening, and then speed again, and then tiring. This just brings a horse to the top, Ralphie. And the signal is there, be ready for a +1. And the horse is obviously in a forward position. Am I in favour if they go +3 or 4? And that's what I'm looking at. The horse has done it before. Now, can Angela Jones handle that? Is Angela Jones going to maybe look for a breather in the middle? And if it looks for the breather in the middle, then it's good night.
Yeah, it's sustained speed's going to be his chance, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk business tomorrow. Race 7 is the Tatts Mile. It's a good little race here. The Inflictor comes back from the Group 1, and it is favourite for the race, but it looks a little bit of value here, and I was delighted to see when your early edition came up too. How you expected the race to be run?
Yeah, well, this is another interesting race when I look at the various angles on the mapping. Everything sort of indicates a length and a half below, possibly 1 length above. Top end speed, 1 length above. So I have to sit here and say, realistically, we're orderly, but I just look at the other angle. The other angle is how many horses like to be in a forward position, even though their natural speed is a tendency to be, on the border of the more like the benchmark type pace for the majority of them. I don't know if they're going to allow that to happen. So I see that there's going to be a group of horses here are going to run outside their comfort zone, and we could quite easily find ourselves running +2, +3, not because that's what they're naturally capable of doing, it's because the general pressure cooker up the front is going to just force horses to run faster than what they need to. And we could have a scenario here where I feel that we're going to run above average because not because the horses are capable of doing that naturally, it's because of the pressure. I've got 3 horses going forward and 2 of them hard up on the lead pack. When I see a clump of 5 horses, it just equals 2-3 lengths faster than normal.
Beautiful. Well, that adds to the merit for what I want to put to you. And
Yep.
as I said, it came out as most advantaged Rising Pacific. So this horse is a mile specialist at Eagle Farm. Last start, it was off a 5-week freshen from winning over 1800, and it was against its Star Stables mate Transatlantic. Well, Transatlantic was 320 into 280. Rising Pacific 10s out to 13s and much better on Betfair, and it was ridden conservatively. It was a fast race. Everything to me points, Vince, that because it was 5 weeks between runs, soft in the market, today's the next grand final.
Yeah. This is ultimately where I came to as well, Ralph. Number one, with just a slightly different lens, and that slightly different lens is I'm factoring that overreaction up front.
Yeah.
Which is like, I can see where you're coming from, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, well, you're going to get the perfect blended run. And this is a situation that if they're running +2 or slightly faster front, this horse is high probability from where it's drawn to absolutely be 3 to 6 lengths maximum. I feel more like 3 or 4 lengths off the leader where this horse is going to be. And then he's going to have the opportunity to unload what it is capable of doing over the last 400, and that's that huge sprint. It's very, very sharp 400-metre runner. It's typically can be on the low somewhere around 3.5 to 4 lengths above the standard, and on the high, we are sort of talking somewhere close to +7, 6.8. We've seen a 5.8, we've seen a 5.3. So this horse is, and this is just all this campaign.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, so I've taken the set with that is what's going to happen. I'm not in love with the pattern, but Gollan has demonstrated to me on more than one occasion when he's got a good horse, I've got to be a little bit more relaxed on the pattern because he could do exactly what you just said before about had the 35-day run, just trimmed it up perfectly for this race. And we've also got to factor in one last thing. I do feel that the horse is better on a good track than giving it, which has got to be an edge. And if you look at this campaign, a couple of his best runs have been when that ground's clean.
I'd be surprised if the market doesn't come for it. It's $8 at the moment. It's that seems
That's
a very
huge.
nice each way price.
Yep.
Yeah, if it parades well, Vince, you'd think the market's really going to come for it. So conversely,
Absolutely.
the favourite is the Inflictor. Can I run a mile?
Well, I went out on a horse a couple of weeks ago and it didn't work for me, right? And this was the other one. I'll do like the tap does. This is my lay of the day. I don't want to laugh, but I can tell you I definitely won't be backing it. Right?
Yes.
The Inflictor just doesn't profile for me, Ralphie. And You nailed it in one. Show me the mile form where this horse has delivered. Show me it. Now, there is a scenario where you can say, well, hang on, when I was back in February of 24 over the mile, it was pretty soft ground. Maybe that's the negative. It's possible, right? It is possible. But the horse has come back this time in and been able to handle ground that's got some give in it. It's got reasonable WTIs from my perspective, even if I make adjustments to what the track condition is to what's really happened. So I couldn't really bring that into being the total play. I'm just taking a position. I don't even know. This horse is not in the right form to run a strong mile. There's no indicators anywhere that this is going to happen. Now, if they run opposed to what I feel is going to happen in terms of pace, and they go very slowly, then perhaps what I'm saying to you now, you can throw it in the bin because that's probably going to help the horse if that happens. But I can't find it. I can't find that they're going to go slow.
Well, it's currently favourite again. I'd be surprised if it stays favourite. So we'll see what happens there. The horses I should ask you together, given they finished alongside each other literally last start, were Exotic Miss and Queen of Dragons. How does each profile here? One's slightly shorter than the other. Exotic Miss around $6. Queen of Dragons about $9.
Yeah, well, if last start was, the real indicator about what Exotic Miss can do at a mile, then we're probably going to have a few little problems because this was one of the horses that's going to be part of the chaos up front. Now, maybe with that run last start, going 2.6 above, the speed's completely gone and we're going to see something different. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We're 21 days. Horse is going to be rock hard fit. They're going to want to be effective and in the race. It's highly unlikely from that draw. They could take a sit, but I just see this horse pressing forward, and that's going to work against the horse. Not that it can't get the distance. I just feel this horse, to be a genuine winning chance here, they've got to go neutral to what they did last start. So I'm not going to say it's impossible that they're going to do that. There is that chance that they might diffuse from that gate and say, well, we don't have to burn the lead and we'll take a sit off the pack. But that pack's still going to be quick, Ralphie. And you might find yourself running benchmark. It probably needs that -2, -4 pace. I've seen stranger things happen, but I'm going to respect the horse from that angle, that they might just maybe take the sit and this will keep the horse in the race. Other than that, I couldn't find any reason why I wanted to back that horse, but it's a chance.
And I'll round off the main chances with Sabak. And look, if you just have a quick glance at the form guide, you go, well, he's beaten 3 lengths last start. Here went enormous. The winner.
Yeah, I thought it was a big run, like a really huge run. I mean, forget about what happened at Eagle Farm, but if you take that run away and you just really look at what it did last start, this horse had put the indicator up. I'm back in top form. 0.9 below benchmark, the first section, off a extremely fast tempo, plus 7.3, Ralphie. 2.6 above 8 to the 4, 4.5 above last 400. If you're not going any good, it's impossible for you to run with that sort of vigor from start to finish. I mean, really, it's almost benchmark right across the board. And if you look at the micro splits, they all were. So here we are. Are we going to get a repeat performance? Well, firstly, I don't believe we're going to go that fast. I feel we're going to go several lengths slower than that, but still good speed. If we get a situation where the horse can run in a race where we're going to be 3-4 lengths softer, which is what I'm anticipating, this is going to be massive for this horse. Where it's drawn, I don't feel it's too bad. And Collett, in some ways, is actually a good rider for this horse as well, Ralphie, because Jason Collett can do some wonderful things when he can blend into a race and just relax and not have to think too much about where I need to be. And if he falls asleep, he's not going to fall asleep, because where he's drawn, he's going to have to stay pretty active. And what I mean by fall asleep, not him falling asleep. If you're drawn 1 and you don't have to do anything with a horse like this, you might miss the timing of your run.
Yes.
But here with 9, he isn't going to have that opportunity. He's going to be in a pack, and he's not that he's going to be dictated to, but he just won't be able to just switch off. He'll just be able to run his race to his rhythm, and he has to stay engaged all the way. And that's how I like Jason Collett. And if there's another run there, Ralphie, which I feel he's quite capable of running to his sort of what I feel is his real profile, somewhere around half above to plus 1.2. You're hard in the race.
And just to finish with, particularly for multis, Vince, it's not often you see a horse that's, $23 and it's got two of the best 4 performances in the race historically. Can we forgive Democracy Manifest? Because I looked at that trial after a poor first up run and I thought, I think you've got your bit tenacity back and he's got the blinkers back on.
Well, Ralphie, we know what we mean by that. Does that mean like it's desperation? Right,
Well, that's right. That's right. It can be desperation.
We do have to think
it can be desperation. Yep.
It can be, right? It can be. But yes, you're right. This could happen. And this horse could just go bang. And oh, goodness me, Ralphie, I looked at it so carefully yesterday, and it's a head scratcher. It is a head scratcher. I don't know what happened to it from a WA, if that's affected it, because the first up run was awful, Ralphie, right? Now, blinkers back on. Maybe that's all it needs. Wallace still pressing the button, right? And it's got Tommy Berry on board. They're all positive signals, but it's tomorrow or never. So I'm 50-50 with that horse.
Fair enough too. All right, race 6. Well, you just mentioned Waller, and this could be the one the market really gravitates to, and I can see why too. Mayor of Mount Bull is a pretty tight favourite, but backable at high twos, around about 280 across the board there in the for the mares over 2100. How are you seeing race 6 unfold?
Yeah, well, here we are, Waller, keeping, spaces in between runs, which is very interesting for Mayor Mount Buller. But then when we look at what's the possibility in terms of tempo, I just see a no-pace race, Ralphie. Just can't help but feel we're going to go slower and slower.
Wow.
And how slow? Well, I guess there's always that possibility of a lone leader, but I'm sort of forecasting more like 2 to 6 lengths below benchmark isn't unrealistic. There's just I don't feel anyone's going to want to take the running because they don't need to. And Osmone's probably the horse that's going to go to the front with Regan Bayliss and Artful Girl. And what are they going to do? Well, you look at their profiles, they're going to be suicidal if they want to try and go fast, and their natural tendency is to run 3-6 lengths below benchmark. So I just see a clustered field, very orderly in terms of speed. I just hope they don't go 20 lengths below benchmark.
Well, if you look at your late closing speed on your early edition of race speed profiles, if they're going slow and Mayor of Mount Bullers just tag him from from that inside draw for J-Mac, she's going to outsprint the lot, isn't she?
Smash him. If that's really the reality of it, because this is exactly what the horse wants. I'm not saying they can't handle more pressure, by the way, but This is just like golden to be in a situation where if they're running 5-6 lengths below benchmark, this horse is going to unleash a last 400 of at least 5-6 lengths above benchmark. More importantly is what it's capable of doing over the last 800, which is a lot closer to plus 10. And, when you see a setup like that, all of a sudden you get a bit excited. Now, you're not going to get excited, I don't think, about the price, but the reality is everything looks very good for this horse. And, you're going to have to pay the J-Mac tax, Ralphie.
Which is the only tax worth paying sometimes in this country. The one also I should have. Well, I'll quickly ask you about Quietness before I get to Pulchritudinous. But Quietness, it looked terrific first up, but it was sort of a no pace wet track run. But you got to respect that the O'Shea Charlton team, brain fade there, O'Shea Charlton team, they're in the zone, and there's a imported mare, so it probably did what they wanted to first Australian start.
Yeah, they would have been very happy with that, Ralphie. It is a horse that, from an overseas profile, sits firmly around that -1 to 2 range. So it's not like it's a star, but the reality is, I've seen some of these internationals come across with that sort of profile, settle into Australia, and then become much better because they have different structures in terms of how they set their horses up. And this was like a perfect example, like going out there, first run a mile, not a lot of speed that the horse delivered through the first section, but did hit the line reasonably well with some weakening. Sort of giving you the indicator that it might still be another runaway, but this would be a good tester for the horse to see if it can at least run to that sort of -1 range.
And Pulchritudinous, I thought it was terrific 2 starts back, and that was a switch-on sign. It was a New Zealand Group 1 winner, but Gay couldn't quite get it going. Well, it did, and then last start, stuffed the start up. So if it jumps cleanly, given your no-pace forecast, maybe in typical Waterhouse Spot style, it'll just roll forward and get a pretty cruisy run.
Yeah, well, it has demonstrated over in New Zealand when it gets into a scenario where there isn't any sort of speed early, it's got the capability of putting in a big finish. Like if I look at that Trentham run back in March last year, last 400 metres that day was plus 4.8. It was pretty solid through from the 8 to the finish line. It was sort of in the 6 range. That's pretty good with a 9.3 length mid-race squeeze. It's like in this horse's wheelhouse, and definitely this horse has been looking for this distance, Ralphy. No question. We're going to see a much better run tomorrow.
All right, we'll leave that there, but it looks like it very much deserving a favourite, Mare of Mount Buller. Well, you spoke about a no-pace race in race 6, race 5, the Tatts Cup, a couple of scratchings as well. So we've got a small field, and even though there's a couple that like being comfortable up front and rolling along, they're probably not going to break any land speed records either.
Who's out, Ralphie?
Out of the race 5 is, well, we've got 4, 5, and 10 out now. So
4, 5, and 10.
hopeful, yeah, Momona hopeful, and Sir Chartwell.
Right, okay. Let me just mark that down because that might change a few things. Here we go. Right. Well, it doesn't change the order though. It's just going to make all other horses skinnier. Pace-wise, it probably doesn't even do anything there either. Like how weird's that, right? So no, I don't feel there's going to be any impact in terms of the speed. They were never going to go fast anyway, Ralphie. Again, I hope we don't have a jackknife in the sense that we're going to be going, -20. I really hope. That's what I don't wish for that because it just makes things really complex. The reason why is all of a sudden, when they go that slowly, if they don't engage until the 500 or 600 metre mark, a lot of horses can rattle off pretty solid finishes, and then there's not a lot between them, and it just becomes like where you're positioned, and edges get taken away from horses. I'm hoping more for an 8 to 10 length below benchmark sort of setup, Ralphie. That's what I'm hoping for. If we get that sort of scenario, that makes it a bit easier from my perspective, and it really does help horses like Sir Lucan to be what I would consider to be a very realistic threat. It doesn't mean that this horse is going to be bad if they go -20, but I just don't want that. I just feel if they go -20, just knowing the nature of the horse, it's a good one-pace runner. It doesn't help you. But if you're running 10, 12 lengths farther, it's faster. I'm not saying it becomes a true staying test. It's just a bit more of a test, and more runners become one pace. That helps Sir Lucan because I just feel the Tim Clark's going to have this in the golden spot all the way.
Yeah, he won't go too slow.
No,
There's no doubt about that. So that's a good setup for him. I suppose I might actually leave it there. There's not a lot of depth to that race, and we're running towards our 1 hour. And I do want to ask you about a couple others, starting with race 4, Brave Design. I'm looking at this one way, upwards, downwards, and I'm thinking, why isn't this even money, Brave Design, in race 4? If it repeats what it did a fortnight back, it can't miss the place, can it?
Well, firstly, when we look at what's the hurdle rate, it's 2 lengths below. So that's the first step, and it clears that quite easily. The challenge is this with Brave Design. I loved what it did. 0.4 below benchmark. Race Matrix got a bit softer than that. It's, it comes back down to the amount of data that's sitting there behind it. Between the 8 and the 4, the horses had a pretty significant slowdown in my view, and in many ways you can look at this and say, well, that 3.6 length slowdown, how much of an impact did that have on the overall performance? Well, you could say nothing, and the horses just sits firm at 0.4 below. But the reality is, the way I'm looking at it, if the race matrix got it about 4.2 below, I feel that it would tighten it up by a couple of lengths had that have not happened, even if he still maintained his 0.4 below. And what we've seen is a clear-cut improvement. The 1,400 metres, I actually feel this is a plus for the horse. My only reservation that I have is the profile of the race. I mean, I've sort of got him marked down that he really hasn't had any real spell. He's had a 63-day break. If you're in Sydney, it's a spell, Ralphy, right?
Yeah.
For me, I look at it, the horse has been sort of ticking over since at least February, and that's the only reservation. Now, I put that to the side. He's just got a gap on the competition, Ralphie. So therefore, he can come into this race, even if he's not going to trend better and stay where he is. That makes him dangerous. And if he drops a couple, he just comes back to the field.
Yeah.
So no matter how you look at it, if you were going to engage in this race, you couldn't dismiss this horse as being your betting proposition.
Lovely. We might leave it there. I don't think I don't think you'll be pulling your shoulders back for the Battle of the Bush final.
No.
But anything you want to tell me, you can tell me tomorrow as well with
Exactly.
races 1 and 2. But I think there's a little bit of gold there for tomorrow. We'll talk business after 9:30, and in the meantime, thank you so much for being a customer at Year Round Carnival.